So the most recent installment in the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise is unceremoniously launched, and boy howdy has the community been kinda quiet on this one. Huh. So yeah, the game released, so about 5 days ago, and it really hasn't seen much bombastic attention from the fanbase like with every other installment before it. And I've seen people confused at this occurrence. One person even saying that they think it's because it's a VR title, which, I mean, Help Wanted 1 existed, so yeah, I can disprove that one pretty quickly. But all in all, I'm ultimately not surprised. So why don't we talk about why that is? Hello everybody, my name is Dubaku, and Help Wanted 2. If you want my thoughts on the game, I think it looks funny. I haven't really played it yet, and for the purposes of this video, we'll only be covering stuff released before the game. So, like, you know, how it looks, what impressions it gave, that kind of stuff. So let's start with how the team went about announcing the game in the first place. Steelwool did learn some sort of lesson by not announcing it at the concept art phase, thank God. But the announcement did come packaged in with the announcement of the much more anticipated Ruin DLC. Now, not only was Ruin overshadowing this new game, but honestly, nobody was even anticipating the game remotely, so it kinda caught people off guard while their focus was already shifted. Now, that in and of itself is already a mark against the marketing, but on top of that, we wouldn't hear any more news from the game until after the Ruin DLC and movies, build-ups, and releases, respectively. What also doesn't help, and has been missing from FNaF in general as of late, is any community engagement with the promotional material. You see, back in ye old yonder year, Scott would build up the release of Click Team. I'm sorry. Scott would build up the release of each Click Team installment with a series of teasers, which also hid secrets within them. This allowed the community to get curious and explore all the breadcrumbs we were left with, and speculate endlessly on what this new game could be and how it could build off of everything we already knew. One of the main reasons MatPat's made so many FNaF theories is because of just how much there was to cover between teasers and actual game content. And this is without even mentioning the sheer amount of other speculation and theory videos channels like 8-Bit Gaming and Razbowski would end up making. This kind of drip feed style of storytelling would ultimately be what helped make the intentionally vague storytelling in the games proper still investing and engaging, which also greatly helped in marketing. That and the fact that they were like 1 to 2 hours each. Meanwhile, in present day, the only external hints at lore leading up to the games are the novels. And I'm gonna be blatantly honest here. I own one of these stupid things and I've never considered actually looking through it once. Most often it's the big community figures that are actually giving us the information from the swimming pool of reading we need to do to understand this story anymore. And even at that, it's only useful for cross-referencing information. This is a massive hindrance since we get very little to work off of anymore unless we're already familiar with the setting of the game, like with Ruin, where it could be assumed that elements could be taken from the books, like, you know, Tales of the Pizzaplex or whatever they're called. But even then, which ones do we... What is even on the table? Is Cassie gonna turn into Fazgoo? Where do we draw the line? I mean, for the love of fastballs, we can't even commonly agree whether the games in the fucking franchise are canon anymore, let alone the books. All this to say that, yeah, there's way too much that may or may not be useful in terms of speculation. And since the fandom has gotten sick of infighting worse than Sonic fans over what's canon or not, even MatPat himself needing to take a great few occasions to point out how whiny the fandom gets over so much as a missing detail from like 20 books in a video that's free to watch. It's left the community with a sort of lull in energy because of how self-destructive it all has become. On top of that will to speculate with the additive material that claims to be separate stories, but also can't help retconning 8-year-old games, there's been a complete lack of clever or well-hidden hints and Easter eggs. Honestly, not even the movie had anything in those teasers other than really confusing design choices. Like, seriously, what was going on here? What? Why? Like, not a single hidden image behind all that smoke that doesn't even remotely appear in the movie, by the way. Honestly, the biggest reason the movie did so well is because it's continuously been on the minds of fans, old and new, as it was in production for 7 years. Ruin had the hype of being what Security Breach couldn't. A game that was finished on launch, as well as taking place in a location we've become painstakingly familiar with. So, what about Help Wanted 2? It's gonna have Sister Location and Pizzeria Simulator in it, as well as more of the Pizzaplex, just what I've always wanted. Yay! More of these one-note characters that were never meant to be expanded on this much. Please, why are you doing this to us? It has, like, a new character, which is a design just using older design elements from elsewhere in the series. I don't know, it really has nothing entirely new. I know for a fact older fans like myself, who we might as well dub the classic fans of FNaF, aren't too excited with how the first trailer immediately showcased a needless downgrade from the older games being remade, and it still looks like shit. Like, okay, the models aren't bad or anything, but seriously, this as well as every other game Steelwool is behind all look incredibly boring. And to the fans who grew up with this, it's a little disappointing. Cue all the comments of people saying, "It doesn't matter What you think? Also, not to mention how we know for a fact they wouldn't have the balls to recreate the ominous majesty of hearing about the two technicians that never left before finding out for yourself why they didn't leave in a wordless moment that breaks the routine you've somewhat gotten used to. But that's a discussion for another day. Newer fans are just getting more of the same as well, since the game's premise isn't even novel or new anymore. You know, thanks to its predecessor. And newcomers are just getting shown that the 10th FNaF game is just a rehash of one of the most notorious games, which makes up the majority of the cover. And then two others, both of which have been arguably divisive, more so than the first three. And again, it just looks boring. I'm sorry, it does! Like, sure, maybe not to those who've gotten used to this muted, desaturated, and largely untextured nonsense, but when you see FNaF, it's usually the old renders from the Click Team games. So imagine the disappointment of someone finding out that this is where the series is. But it just looks unfinished. And because the series decided it'd shift gears from being teen-focused with an indirect appeal to kids, opting instead to babyfy everything because nobody on board understands a single thing about what made FNaF effective in the first place, it's resulted in the player base getting younger and resultantly less able to make a substantial wave in the community. I mean, how many of the people that get on fights regularly on Twitter are actually the age that they say they are? I mean, fuck's sake, Phil Moore got canceled because a minor was being harassed after interacting with a minor's DNI account. Wow. So, to summarize for all you essay format enthusiasts out there, the biggest reason Help Wanted 2 isn't kicking up a real storm is because it has nothing going for it unlike games before. It suffers from lacking intricacy in its build-up and release, which was also kind of barred from any fanfare. Still, you're just digging your own grave here, man. And on top of it all, it leaves a relatively boring first impression, which makes it less likely to catch eyes. Oh, and also no ominous rabbits! Actually, no, I've been hearing that there's Vanny's here. For like 2 seconds. Okay. Couldn't have promoted that in the promotional material at least? So yeah, honestly, it was only a matter of time before these half-hearted marketing attempts caught up with FNaF. But nevertheless, it is still a little sad to see. Still not as sad as the Mimic as a character.